Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Subscription Scaled. I'm your host, Nick Frederick. With me today is a special guest. We have Jalem Getz, who is the president of Wantable. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Nick. Nice to be here.
Yeah, well, can't wait to hear more. Tell us, let's start at the beginning here. Tell us about Wantable, what it is, and, how you came to be there.
Yeah, sure. Well, Wantable is an apparel retailer first. We're an online retailer of women's apparel primarily, although we do offer some men's product. We are a try before you buy retailer, which simply means that we send products to customers to try on in the comfort of their own home before they pay for them. And on top of that, we're also a personal styling service. What that means is we pick out items for customers that we think they'll like and send them to them before they've had an opportunity to see them. So the onus is really on us to make sure we send items that they will like. Otherwise, they're not going to buy them. They'll just send them back. We pay for shipping both ways. We're what I like to call a middle-aged startup. We've been around 9 years, so we're not quite brand new, but we're still relatively small. We have about 250 employees. We're based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but like many companies today in a post-pandemic world, our workforce is pretty far flung across the U.S.
Yeah. So 9 years, wow. In this business, with a lot of the guests that I have on the show, that's two, three, four times as long as a lot of others that are
You're,
out there.
you're making me
So
feel old, but yeah, that's why I kind of affectionately call ourselves a middle-aged startup.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm sure you've learned a lot along the way there, so can't wait to dive into that some more. But how did you find yourself at Wandable? Have you been there since the beginning?
Yeah, I'm the founder, so I started the company. Prior to this, I ran or founded a company called By Seasons, which was the largest retailer of party supplies and costumes on the internet in the world. One out of three costumes sold in this country at one point during Halloween online came from that company. To give you some scale, we would ship about 150,000 costumes a day during October, 2,000 employees, quite a large operation. Sold to Liberty Media in 2006, so I'm dating myself a bit. Started that company in 1998, and then retired there in 2010 when I was 38, 37, and said, hey, maybe I should do this one more time. And then I, was kind of sketching out the concept of what would be wantable. We knew personalization was going to be at the core of what we did because they had a lot of experience with that in our children's party supply business, which was pretty big. And at first I went after makeup, but we don't sell makeup today. We sell women's apparel today. So we tried the makeup category. We found a lot of success there. Switched over to women's apparel, and that was probably about 6 years ago now, so quite some time, and have found our groove there, so to speak.
Was the makeup company a different one, or that was what Wantable offered and now it's switched to apparel?
Yeah, Wantable, our tagline was a beautiful new thing, which the idea was, we were a new company and we would introduce customers to beautiful new products specific to the makeup category.
Yeah. So to go into that a little bit, what drove you to kind of shutter that product line and focus entirely on apparel as opposed to just adding on top?
Yeah, at the end of the day, we feel like it's important to meet the customers where they want to be, and makeup for various reasons. Although there's great companies, Ipsy is a fantastic company in the space. Birchbox is one of the leaders in the space. It's really important to us to just add value, and the business was growing. We were doing quite well, but we just felt that makeup alone was just not going to be enough. We had some makeup experience. My previous company, believe it or not, I actually saw a lot of makeup. All makeup brands saw a lot of makeup at Halloween. But we just felt we would give apparel a try. So we actually launched the apparel version of the business, women's activewear, alongside makeup. And the customers just let us know, hey, we like the makeup, but we love this side. And there's a little bit of common sense in these old bones, so we just kind of went with what the customers wanted and built from there. So we offer multiple categories in women's apparel today: women's ready-to-wear, women's activewear, women's intimate apparel, and we also sell men's activewear.
Okay. So within apparel, you've got multiple product lines
We
going
do
there.
multiple categories, yeah.
Okay. You mentioned at the beginning, talking about the business model, that it's a personal styling component to it as well, helping you decide, what your style is. That component, is that all Is that all AI and questions in the background, or is that actual human personal stylist, or a combination of both? How does that work?
Yeah, totally. It's a combination of both. A little bit more machine learning than AI, but there's some AI in there. Machine learning is, a big component of our business across the board, from helping us determine which products to buy, which products to reorder, to which products to put in a customer's box. So if you kind of think of it as a funnel, at the top you have tens of thousands of products that we offer, and then there's pretty binary responses. If you're a large, we're not going to send you an extra large, right? So it starts to kind of layer it down, and then from there, then you have a machine learning component that basically says, okay, what's the attributes of this customer, the preferences of the customer, how do those align with lookalike or similar audiences, or maybe take into consideration past behavior, things that you kept, and then kind of boil that down to a smaller subset that then a stylist has. There's a score that we call, it's a bit proprietary, so I won't go into too much, but basically then influences the stylist on what items to put in the box. But ultimately, it's that stylist, he or she, making that decision, just like a great sales associate would at a store, interacting and choosing the items that customer would have.
Yeah, that's an interesting use of both human and machine intelligence at the same time there. I assume that's a model that you've been tweaking over time to figure out kind of what works best and of course make it more efficient in the process.
Yeah, we firmly believe, as I think many entrepreneurs do today, we find ourselves knowing more today than we knew yesterday. So because of that, yeah, it's a constant evolution. We don't necessarily see an end of the road, but just a constant journey. But yes, if we look back years ago, what we were doing in comparison to what we're doing today, we've come quite a ways.
Sure. How have the customers, I'm curious, respond to that? Because style is such a finicky thing, right? You're trying to extract from a customer what your style is, and of course, those things even change over time. So, how do you stay in front of that, make it easy for a customer, but still really give them what they want?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, first off, style is constantly a moving target. What was, yeah, popular last fall is not necessarily going to be popular this fall. Although there are certain items that are what we would call staples or evergreen items. So how do we stay on top of it? It's a constant evolution of the machine learning, but it's also good merchants. These are the folks that are out there in the marketplace sourcing the items, using the data to make informed decisions. Very similar to what you'd find at another retailer. So you go into a boutique retail store and they've got the new items for the season. A lot of what goes into making those choices is similar here at Wantable. The difference would be in you go into a store and if it's set properly, meaning it has a great assortment, the customer's going to interact and find things that they want. We have to both set the store properly so the stylists have a great assortment, but also then pick quote unquote blindly the items that the customers would receive. So the way we measure it, NPS, right? And the items that people keep. We believe people vote with their wallets, and if they buy something, that means we send them something they liked, and if they don't, we send them something that they didn't like.
Yeah. So, talk a little bit about that as it relates to ongoing engagement with the customer, right? Because the first time they come in and sign up, they're going to ask the questions. You're going to send them a box. Is that then become the recurring service? You send them another box every month or whatever frequency they want.
Yeah, it can. And I mean, kind of to speak to the subscription component, I mean, we view subscription maybe in two universes. There's probably much more granularity than this, but for simplicity, there's the consumables, the things like razors or vitamins that customer needs the same widget on a schedule every month, every week, every quarter, whatever it happens to be. And those are the very complex and important things to stay engaged with the customer, but it's kind of a known thing. If they like the Mach 3 razor, they're probably going to want to continue to get the Mach 3 razor on a certain schedule, right? Apparel is a bit different. You have customers, we would say across the spectrum, you have snackers. These are people that, want to have, we call our boxes edits. So they will want an edit every month or every few weeks, and they buy a few items. They just like to snack and kind of like get something new and try have a great new top for that date night with their partner on Thursday or whatever it happens to be. And those are great customers, and so we would see them on a monthly cadence kind of forever, right? Then you have the bingers, right? These are the folks that they kind of get a whole bunch of stuff at once, right? They're maybe cleaning out their wardrobe or what have you, and they buy a bunch of stuff, have a whole bunch of edits in a short period of time, and then will go a period of time. So because we offer the things that kind of fit, we'll offer a monthly or an ongoing or a bi-monthly or a quarterly and even every 6 month subscription. Subscription is less than 50% of what we do, right? We view it as just one way to provide value to the customer. We're here to make their lives simple. So we pick products that we think that they're going to love, so they don't have to worry about that. We send it to them if they want on a schedule that just works out, right? So if we're smart and we use the data properly, we will know what a customer wants and when she wants it before she does. And therefore, when she comes, I say she because 95% of our customers are female. When she comes home, from a long day at work, and the vast majority of our customers are hardworking professional, I shouldn't say hardworking, busy professional women, and therefore their time is very important to them. And so we take, the time equation out and bring the shopping to her doorstep. So to answer your question, it kind of varies based on the customer and her needs. It's not just locked into one set subscription.
Makes sense. So meeting the customer with whatever sort of arrangement they ultimately want is the approach that you've taken. The flip side of that coin is that that creates complexity, right? Being able to have systems and processes that can support customers going back and forth between those two things. So how do you try to keep things as efficient as you can while still meeting what the customer wants?
Yeah, I mean, we view complexity as a double-edged sword in the sense that it creates a barrier to entry, right? So the more complex a business
Sure.
is, the harder it is for a competitor to get in. Use my last company. It's hard to go from shipping, 1,000 Halloween costumes a day to 150,000 in a month or so. So that was a barrier to entry. And we said, how do you do it? Well, it was very hard, but like many of your listeners, their business is probably hard. And a lot of that complexity creates a barrier to entry, which makes it more difficult for competitors to come in. So we embrace, the complexity and view it as a positive from that standpoint. Now, we don't like complexity for the sake of complexity, but being able to kind of nuance and peel back the layers of the onion. So we're actually getting the customer what she wants and meeting her where she wants to be in the sense of frequency or types of products or multiple categories or things like that. Again, we're better today than we were yesterday, so every day we're improving that. But specifically, it's kind of hard to get into specifics until we kind of dive into kind of one rabbit hole. So I don't know if I can fully answer that question.
Definitely makes sense.
Even though I gave you a long answer.
Well, I really appreciate that answer. I think some people, some business owners, and that are running subscription businesses think that they run away from complexity, right? They want to keep things simple and lean and not have to deal with it. But I like the perspective of calling it competitive advantage because that does make it harder for somebody else to come into it, and it creates a more personalized experience for your customers, I'm sure, which has long-term benefits as well, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, 100% right. I just wanted to add the caveat. If someone can take what you're doing and make it simpler, well, then they should make it simpler. You know what I mean? It's complex because of the service that we offer, not because we've said, hey, we're just going to make this thing complex. Efficiency is key. We're big believers in efficiency, but that barrier to entry can be set by having a very sophisticated organization.
Yeah. So one of the complexities I would think that you would be dealing with is, you are compared to some others that I talk with or have brought on the show, is that you guys are dealing with sending a box or an edit to a customer each month that's got hundreds of dollars worth of physical goods in it, right? And you don't know what they're going to keep or what they're not. So when it comes to you know keeping tabs on your inventory that you are now sending out to a whole bunch of customers, how do you deal with that complexity? Because you want to know that if you're going to send a box and they're going to keep it all, you're going to get paid, right? So do you guys
Right.
do pre-authorizations and then credit back later? I mean, how do you deal with something like that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of companies coming online that are getting into enabling try before you buy, whether it's Shopify or other platforms, not Shopify doing it, but platforms that integrate with
Yep.
Shopify. And I think they're taking the approach of, hey, get a pre-auth on that card. Let's say you're sending $100. Our average edit is called $250. It's quite a
Okay.
range because, price point is something that customers, really have an opportunity to weigh in. So it can be as low as $100 in that box and it can be $500. But let's just use 250 as kind of a middle number. If you authorize $250 on someone's card, before you ship them the goods, and then they have 2 weeks, by the time transit is there and they get to hang on to it and return it before that's going to be released. We don't find that as a very valuable, or we don't even feel that as try before you buy, because you've locked up their credit card, right,
Yeah.
or their
Right.
debit card. And the average consumer today, in particular in COVID, where things can be a little bit tighter, that's just not the right way to do business. So
Yeah.
I'm going to steer a little bit away from our secret sauce just because it's so proprietary. But we do look at, kind of a bit at these companies that are coming in saying, hey, we're going to offer try before you buy as a plug-in, but all they're really doing is authorizing a card and tying up someone's money, and you're not getting it. But the customer can't use it either, because either the debit card has a hold on it or their
Right.
credit has been reduced on a credit card has been reduced. It seems like not the right way.
Yeah.
But we've been doing it 9 years, and we think we figured out a pretty cool way to do it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, just to add to that, I mean, most banks are only allowing auths to stay on the card for 7 days anyway, right? So if it takes longer than that for you to ship the good and then get it back to determine what to charge them, you've lost your auth anyway. So,
Yeah, there's this movement, though, not to dive too far down, with the folks over at Stripe and other big processors, to shift that to accommodate the try before you buy component, where you can do a reauth or recap. It's not to get too far down that rabbit hole, but our point of view is that that's the wrong approach, because at any event, whether it's 7 days or 14 days or one day, you're tying up someone's money when you promise to let them try it on before they paid for it, which seems disingenuous if you're tying up their money to me.
absolutely, that's certainly a customer first approach.
Yeah.
So from the business side, how do you have challenges and without going too far into your secret sauce, how are you dealing with the potential loss on the other end of, hey, now somebody kept the whole box and now I can't authorize for, the full amount that they owe me?
Yeah, so this is another great aspect of where our machine learning comes to play. So, there are great companies out there that detect fraud, right? Hey, there's the easy one, right? Oh, it's a U.S. credit card, but the IP address is, somewhere overseas, and the order's coming in at 2 a.m., right? There's some pretty clear things to detect and prevent deliberate fraud. We're good at that, but there are companies that are fantastic at that. We have something that we call soft fraud, or which are people that maybe their eyes are too big for their wallet, right? So we send them $250 worth of stuff. These are good people, they're good customers. Sometimes they're repeat customers, but the box shows up, and people are tight, and they, instead of sending it back, they let the card decline and they just hang on to it and they don't think about it, and they didn't set out at the beginning to defraud us. So, we have a lot of machine learning and a lot of models around various things that kind of help inform us on, how to prevent that, reduce that. We have certainly rebill schedules. We can set up payment plans if people go kind of that way. But at the end of the day, the goal is to prevent this stuff from happening. So, not getting too far into the secret sauce, you can find an intersection across many things that can give you informed, opinion on a fraud, a potential risk score. Cell phone carrier. If you're a Cricket Wireless customer versus an AT&T customer, AT&T customer is far less likely to have soft fraud than a Cricket Wireless. Just a fact. This is the way it is.
Yeah.
Same thing with Discover versus American Express, right? And so you can't use any one of these things to judge or prejudge somebody, and we would never do that. But when everything is taken in the whole, we then will inform our team to maybe have a more detailed conversation with that customer before we send the order or something like that. Again, we can't allow the systems to completely, bias the result, but we certainly use it to kind of help us set the stage. And we're very much a human company, so humans get involved at every step of the way, whether it's picking the products that we send, having the relationship with the customer, or talking to them about what they want to receive from us, and creating an environment where that edit is something that they not only want but can keep.
Interesting. I've never heard the term soft fraud put together like that in the way that you just defined it, but it certainly makes sense for your business.
Right.
I assume that's kind of taking the soft decline, not able to pay for it, combined with, well, fraud is probably a little bit of an extreme in that particular situation, but it certainly makes sense. Do you deal with, even then, for transactions that posted payments, you did receive potential friendly fraud on the back end of somebody going, hey, I don't remember signing up for this, so I'm just going to call my bank and dispute the charge?
Yeah, sure. So every reach, I wouldn't call that overly friendly, but but you're exactly right. I mean, the number one, and I don't think this is unique to my business. Your listeners may, find a similar kind of story here, but the number one thing is hey, the box never showed up on my doorstep. when we have delivery confirmation, it showed up. And now if you're a customer of Amazon, which we almost all are, they'll take photos. Like there's the box, there's your mat, there it is. If you get your email confirmation, so you'll always have things like that. And sometimes the box didn't show up. Like someone took it off your. We've all seen the YouTube videos of people getting their Christmas gifts stolen off their doorstep. So we always have to default to we trust our customers, and that's a cost of doing business that I think every online retailer is going to have.
Absolutely. Makes sense. So since you've been around for 9 years, I think it's very relevant to ask you the question about what the pandemic has done to your business. You had a baseline there, obviously, even in apparel, and then all of a sudden the pandemic happens, and so many people are staying at home, and now looks like a good portion of the U.S. population is working from home permanently. So, what did that cause you guys to do in terms of your offering and your product, and maybe the way you offer that to customers? What did you
Yeah,
do?
certainly we're a member of the online retail community. So if you zoom out 10,000 feet, the pandemic was more positive, unfortunately, than negative. And I say unfortunately is that I think any one of us would gladly trade our current state, even if our business is better, for the previous state. But that said, we are where we are. And customer behavior changed, right? And we've all seen the reports. That customer now is shopping online at a greater extent. That has not particularly benefited me more than, someone who sells, surfboards. Like it's all the same thing, right? We're all seeing that kind of increase. Coming down a little bit, and as it pertains to our business, first step was like, our facility got shut down because our facility is in Wisconsin, a distribution center, and the governor, rightfully so at the time, said, "Hey, this is new, and we're going to shut down all non-essential places." So we got shut down for 2 weeks. We didn't lay anybody off. Everyone got a 2 week. If they couldn't work, we still paid. We're really very much a team-oriented organization. Got out of that, our team went back to work, and sure enough, the demand, kind of went up, and we, rode that. The demand changed though. It went from ready to wear, casual wear, like I'm wearing now, a collared shirt, to active wear. I think we probably have all seen that, like, hey, everyone's got, sweatpants on
Right.
on a Zoom call, right?
Yep.
So, it created a lot of, even though the dollar started to grow, the shifts internally were even steeper because one category was going down, office attire, where active was going up, but the total net was up. So you saw incredible gains in certain categories. Then we call it going backwards through the pandemic. We saw seasonal changes, things that like, hey, this is when shorts sell, this is when sweaters sell. That all got turned upside down as we're kind of, Q1, Q2 of this year, quote unquote, exiting the pandemic, despite the kind of recent spikes that we're going through now. And that changed seasonal patterns. And what that meant for a retailer that's used to saying, hey, this is when we sell shorts and this is when we sell sweaters, to see those things change has been, very interesting and a bit of a struggle. Supply chain issues, across the board. So the net is fantastic. The micro is like, man, there's all kinds of stuff going sideways and ups and downs and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, who would have thought we would ever been in this situation? And it's well said that even those of us that, found ourselves on the upside of this or had positive benefit from it still would rather go back and not having to have gone through that. But what do you see in terms of the future of, I'm sure, the supply chain issues that you've dealt with? I'm sure you've learned some lessons from that. Or is there anything fundamentally changing about the way you're going to run the business going forward as a result of having gone through this?
For us in particular, it's the world is more volatile to us than it was before. There could be a lockdown, there could be this. There's all kinds of shoes that could drop, and there's all kinds of changes. So, if as we look to managing our business, we are an optimistic group, meaning that we believe that the other side is always better, and we're going to march towards having a better world. But at the end of the day, there are going to be these things that just come out of left field, whether, whatever they happen to be, and they're outside of our control. So maybe we used to plan out, 12 months at a time. Well, we still plan 12 months at a time, but we break it instead of monthly segments into weekly segments, right? So we've gone to planning our business down to the week, and we roll those plans, re-roll those plans every week, way out. That's a lot of extra work, but that's because this Monday is different than last Monday, and next Monday is still unknown.
Right. Wow. That's
Yeah.
interesting. What are you seeing today in terms of effective customer acquisition channels? I mean, I'm hearing everything from, influencer marketing, which seems like it might be relevant, to your particular business, but, outside of the standard Google AdWords and things like that, Facebook marketing, is there anything out there that you're seeing as new and innovative ways to reach new customers?
Yeah, Nick, I wish I could come on your show and tell the team, tell your listeners what all of us want to know, which is how can we get off Facebook? Right.
Right.
So,
Yep.
unfortunately, I can't do that.
Right.
But I will share, we can all have a beer over like the sorrows of Facebook and the ups and downs of Facebook. At least that's our perspective. And, I have
We're
friends
not
at
allowed.
large companies, whether it's Peloton or down the line, that like, I feel good when I hear these big guys talk about the same problems I have. At least Facebook makes me feel better. But the challenges with, CPMs, cost per impressions going up, and all these things happening. I mean, Facebook's, and I'm not trying to just obsess about Facebook, but to me, Facebook is typically the biggest acquisition channel for a business like mine. Because I don't sell on Amazon or things like that. And so if you see these, the Facebook's earnings, eyeballs, impressions went up like this much. Earnings went up this much. Basic math is pretty simple. The cost per eyeball, the cost per impression went up. And I think the only way for us, and hopefully your next guest will have a better answer, but the only way for us to kind of manage that is to continuously, obsessively focus on customer lifetime value and hanging on to those customers.
All right. Yep.
If I get $500 a week out of, or a month or a year or whatever your period is out of a customer, and my competitor only gets 250, I have more dollars to afford the higher CPMs, and that's really ultimately what we look at. So it's a pain. The CPMs are going up. I mean, there was this split second where all of a sudden the world kind of stopped and they dropped for a second, and we all of us online retailers went crazy, but then it's right back to where it is. Holiday, I can't imagine what Christmas is going to be like, but get ready.
It's coming. Another spike, right?
Yeah.
Well, so on that point of getting more out of a customer, if it's costing more to acquire them, what are some things? What advice would you give others to say, get as much as you can out of this relationship?
Yeah, so I think I'll tell you what was pretty obvious. Take care of your customer. Make sure that you look at them, and you really internally look and say, what does it cost if you're more financially driven? What does it cost to get a new customer versus retain a customer, right? That said, you can't break your back for a customer. So each listener will have to kind of view that through their own lens. I'll just talk about my own experience. I sold my last company to Liberty Media, which owns QVC, or owned QVC 15 years ago. So I got to walk into QVC, and everyone makes fun of QVC, or they used to, for being this big stodgy TV retailer. Well, at the time, they were $7 billion in revenue and throwing off $1.5 billion in free cash every year. They were a juggernaut. They measured their customers in number of purchases per week. Think about that.
Wow.
And so, I came from a Halloween business where it's like number of purchases per year. One, sometimes two if there's kids. So, we looked at, that gave me a new perspective. And how can you, again, I hate to overuse this term, but meet the customer where they are. So I started as women's ready to wear, active wear. Now I sell intimate apparel, right? All those customers buy those categories, and sometimes they bounce between them. So one way that I've addressed it at Wantable is to offer, hey, if I've got great customers that buy active wear, now can I sell them ready to wear, casual wear? Now can I sell them intimate apparel, right? You're kind of getting greater share of wallet. So when I spin up a new category, it's not so much to attract a new diverse customer base. Certainly that's on the horizon. The biggest thing is how can I get greater share of wallet, i.e. get my existing customers to buy more and buy more of different things. And that's kind of the philosophy that we've taken. Another strategy would be, which we don't hold today as the number one strategy, would be, hey, our customers, we're just one of many, many retailers that they buy from. So they might get tops from me or Nordstrom or Target or Stitch Fix or Ever Eve or whoever it happens to be. You can say, I'm going to cannibalize them and try and get more of those ready to wear dollars. That's another way to do it too.
So you're saying, are you going as far as saying partnerships and alliances there with others, or
No. I'm saying there's two ways to do it. You can either grow if your customer buys razors from you. Make sure there's only two ways to grow. 3, raise the price of your razors, which I wouldn't do. I get them to buy every single razor from you, which or sell them shampoo as well, right?
Okay.
Like
Okay.
that's it. Like if you look at your, you know, the if your customer annual spend is growing slower than your marketing spend as a percentage, that's
Yeah.
something to be concerned about. So if marketing is up 50% in terms of customer acquisition costs, and your revenue per customer is up 25% in the same period, at some point, if that continues, you won't be able to afford the customers.
Yeah. Those two lines diverge, don't they?
Yeah.
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 Well, where I was going there, do you see value in, you can always get more of your customer by offering more products, right? That is absolutely an option and certainly ones that make sense. Do you see value in alliances with others in kind of the broader sphere of what you do? Say maybe a makeup company who might have a lot of customers and do an affiliate marketing that way. Some are out there exploring that. Is that something that's interesting to you and makes sense for your business?
So I'll give you a yes and a no. So no, it's
Okay.
not interesting to Wantable today, but that's because there's other reasons for that. So I'll set that aside. As a CEO that wants to grow a business, it does make sense for a lot of businesses to do that, to align, right? To hey, you have this type of a 24-year-old female consumer. I have a 24-year-old female consumer. You sell widget B, I sell widget A. Let's get together and figure out how to do that. And so that's where partnerships work out. And you'll see that with influencers. I mean, that's a form of that with influencers. And my last company, they also owned the Discovery Channel. So we had Discovery Channel costumes, and we did cross marketing there. I mean, so there's all kinds of ways to to do that. So is it right for my company today? No. Is it a fantastic opportunity? I think it's a very good point that you made that if you can find somebody out there where 1 + 1 = 3, do it.
Yeah, the synergy model. When it comes to these customers and the products that they're buying from you, you were saying you've got the component of customers that are subscription and those are doing more one-off purchases and some, move in between. One of the things that's most attractive about subscription to CEOs and CFOs is, of course, the predictable revenue, right? Just knowing that, hey, I've got this many customers, I can expect them to pay again next month at this rate. And do you find that particularly challenging for your model of having a component of both, or do you see enough predictability in your customer base, even those just making one-time purchases, that it is more predictable, especially compared to your prior businesses?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love the subscription component for all the things that you said, right? If you have 10 customers, it's a highly volatile thing. But you add that to 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 customers, you pretty much have this kind of curve that you can rely on. This percent are going to skip this month. This percent are going to cancel. This percent are going to go to this period and this period, right? So you can really model that out.
That out.
But I would say similarly, when you look at all your other channels and you say, okay, we have this email list, this is what we do, you can model those out too, right? So if you've got 1 million people on your list and you segment that down, you kind of have your windows or tolerances on what's your open rate, what's your click-through rate, what's your purchase rate, right? And then so there is some modeling that can go across the board. So I'm not dismissive whatsoever of subscription in my category, but my category is probably closer to just traditional retail in the sense, of how it works, as opposed to that replenishment model. Like, here's the approach. We let our customers know before we run a subscription sometimes a week in advance and a few days in advance. We let them know. We like churn. Churn, a VC once said to me, what's your churn rate? And I said, basically, you don't know what you're talking about because churn in my business doesn't make sense. At some point you're going to run out of every customer in the world. So you have to, again, take care of them where they want to be. So churn is good because if I trick a customer by running a subscription before I email them, or doing kind of or my favorite one that companies do is they essentially say, I can take your credit card online, but if you want to cancel, for your security, you have to call us up. That's, forgive my language, BS. That's them just trying to kind of shore it up. And they're not thinking of your interest, the customer, they're thinking of theirs. At some point, those companies will hit a wall and crash. And so we don't take that approach. Right? So that's very important. So I would say make sure you're taking care of your customers. It's all modeled out for us, whether it's subscription revenue or one-off purchases. We can model that stuff out pretty easily because of the size of the base.
You may be the first person to ever come on my show or any other subscription show and say churn is good. I mean, it certainly makes sense for all the reasons you said, but
Right.
it's just funny to hear it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I don't, and I hate to keep using the razor model, but we get up as men, we get up and we shave every single day, right? So that churn might be a signal of something bad. But because of the way consumers buy in my business being, completely different, churn is good, especially if it's churn with a positive NPS. That's like golden. It's like, because we know they're coming back when they're ready.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting point and an important one because what we think of as subscription was something decades ago that was very siloed, meant something very specific, AARP or, AAA or something like that, where
Mhm.
what subscription was. That model has evolved, right, dramatically, especially in the past 5 years in terms of how you define it. And there's a lot of different definitions of it. But I think the one thread that really brings it all together is recurring engagement with a customer. It might not mean the exact same interval. It might mean there's breaks in the middle, but what you really want is that long-term relationship with them, right?
Exactly right. The way we look at it, which is saying exactly what you're saying, but in a different lens, is LTV and lifetime value to us is really annual spend, is how we look at it. Like, what is that customer spending at the 1, the 3, the 9, the 12, periods of time? And if that's trending up, why do I care that if they unsubscribed on month 1 and then on month 12 they bought a boatload of stuff?
Right.
I met them where they
Yeah.
wanted to be. That was their buying habit. That's what they wanted.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Well, and to that point, if you met them where they wanted to be, which was to cancel after 1 month, but you took care of them, you did right by the customer, made it easy for them to cancel, and then, it comes around to the holidays and they go, well, I got to go buy a bunch of stuff or whatever. I mean, you want to be in that you want to be in that headspace of theirs, right? And have that additional opportunity to win them back or bring them back at
yep.
that point.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
When it comes to investments in your business, whether that's technology or people or marketing for that matter, what do you see as the major levers there that are influencing your decisions? And one of the reasons I ask that is your platform and what you're offering to customers very, I'm sure, tech heavy, right? Because you're combining not only the website itself, the purchasing experience, but the back end of looking for styles for them and
Sure.
coming up with something that's very specific to the customer, and then customer service, payments, and everything else that's behind it. So I'm sure it's a very technology heavy invested business, but you could also take dollars and go put it into more marketing. So, how do you weigh those things out? What's and I'm sure that's been an evolution over time as well. But what are those factors for you?
Yeah, you said it right there at the end. It is an evolution over time. My favorite saying across the business: you have to manage a company for the times you're in. So when it was just me and Casey, my technical co-founder, and he and I in the room, it's like, okay, well, we're picking orders too, right? Like I mean, it's like all of our budget went to ramen noodles and to code. Like that was it, right? Now I'm not going to take all our budget now and do that, right? So as you build that foundation of technology, those budgets change, and so you're more mindful of that, right? So I don't know if so where we are today is we're a small company, and we're but we have certainly enough mass. We have 250 employees, so with that kind of rate, you can then start to say, okay, we've matured to a point. And I like to look at things in orders of magnitude. So when we were 2.5 employees, it was one way. When we were 25, another. 250 now, and when we get to 2,500 employees, completely different. So today we have very, budgets. Like this is what IT gets, and annually we kind of review that. This is what marketing gets, right? Although marketing is variable for us. So labor and marketing, with the exception of overhead like me, fixed labor, variable labor, which would be customer service, our stylists, our warehouse team, that is pegged to revenue growth or contraction. So if revenue contracts, those budgets come down. If revenue goes up, they go, but they typically peg at the same percentage, right? And so marketing is the same for us. So I love it when people get on the phone and try and sell me something and say, what's your marketing budget? I'm like, well, it's $2 billion, because if you can meet my ROI, then I'll take as many orders as you can get.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
but at the end of the day, I'm not looking to spend a dollar amount. I'm looking on a return on investment. So I don't know, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. I love that answer. I kind of feel the same way about my business. It's like it's kind of irrelevant. What is the return going to be here? And then I will tell you what the budget's going to be,
Yeah,
not the other way around.
exactly
Yeah.
right.
Well, Jalem, I've certainly enjoyed this conversation. I mean, you said shared so many great insights that I'm sure were incredibly valuable to the listeners. For those that may have more questions for you, deeper questions, how can they get a hold of you? And of course, what's the website for Wantable if they want to
Yeah,
check out
so
the
it's
product?
wantable.com, wantable.com.
Okay,
You can email me if you can remember my spelling of my name, which is a trick, which is Jalem, Jalem, at wantable.com. Send me an email. I'll do my very best to respond to everybody. I apologize if it's in the middle of the night. As founders, that's typically when we get to that stuff, but it will
I know
come
that drill.
across. And Nick, it was great to meet you digitally. Really appreciate the very insightful questions. So, yeah, hopefully your listeners found some value, and look forward to continuing the relationship.
I did, so I'm sure the listeners did as well. But thank you for taking the time to come on with us and share today. So thanks
Yeah.
again.